All right, everybody's here. Who's excited? We're gonna get started. Go ahead and we'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll get going with the first round. Go ahead, introduce yourselves and the side you're stating.
My name is Ricardo Miller. I'm a fourth speaker, speaking for the affirmative side.
Jaden Howard. I'm the third summary speaker, speaking for the affirmative side.
Trinaya Campbell. I'm the second speaker speaking for the affirmative side.
I'm Alicia Thurston. I'm first speaker for the affirmative side.
Malaya, first speaker, negative side.
Second speaker, negative.
I'm Alejandra L'Oreal. I'm the speaker for the Hero fourth speaker.
I am Kira Hood, fifth speaker for the negative side.
And then, whenever you're ready, first speaker, 5 minutes to start. I'll give you, to discuss for everybody, I'll give you 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes left. 1 minute, you have 1 minute left. And once you've had 5 minutes, time to go and cut shot.
I don't think I'm going to finish all the minutes.
Well,
You got it. Take your time.
Today I'm here as the affirmative for the death penalty being abolished due to how it negatively affects our society and our country as a whole. My first point will be that it doesn't give a chance for reformation. Reformation is the action or process of reforming as an institution or practice. In the United States, prisons hold very little opportunities for reformation. Yes, you can get an education. Yes, you can talk with a therapist, but why aren't these options for everyone? Why is the death penalty an instant punishment for some inmates? How does killing someone help reform others? In this article from the Death Penalty Information Center, it shows how many failed or botched executions have occurred. In their article titled Botched Executions, it states that it is estimated that 3% of executions in the period from 1890 to 2010 were botched, meaning that person was put through pain, like more pain than what they should have been. It also states that out of 120 years, of the 8,776 people who were to be executed, 276 were botched. 276. Can you imagine being in the electric chair or having strenuous amounts of medication running through your body, lethal injection, causing excruciating pain, all to survive it? The death penalty was supposed to... was supposed to be seen as safe, reliable, effective, and humane. After hearing about all these botched executions, how can you still agree to keep the death penalty? The idea that billions of dollars are poured into corrections facilities is astounding. So many people, all of us included, use their taxpaying dollars to keep bad people behind bars or to put them down. Leading back to my first point, if our tax dollars were used in a more efficient and effective way, such as reforming the inmates, as we should be, more inmates would be out on parole. If they were taught classes and weren't limited while being in prison, they would have more motivation to want to do better. By keeping them locked up, we're overfilling the cells, costing us even more money to either have to build more prisons or have them moved around a lot. Instead, those funds are going towards finding long-term solutions to actually stop crime or speeding up the process to give people trial. For example, in High Cost of Death Row by the New York Times editorial, they stated, to the many excellent reasons to abolish the death penalty, it's immoral, it doesn't deter murder, and it affects minorities disproportionately. We can add one more. It's an economic drain on the government with already badly depleted budgets. Along with these points, not only do government officials at times find difficulty supporting capital punishment, but so do those who operate the process. In a study by NPR, when they're interviewing people who work death penalty cases, from the officers who monitor them and the executioner themselves, not one voiced their support for the death penalty. My third claim is creating other options for lower class crimes and allowing the bigger prisoners as a replacement for those with larger, higher class felonies. By creating an alternative for the lower class, it then allows them more freedom to reform and be able to reconnect with society, which then leaves more room in the prisons for those of the higher convictions as opposed to putting them on death row. In Top Trends in Criminal Justice Reform 2022, it stated that evolving framework is rooted in reducing returns to prisons for technical violations, expanding alternatives to prisons for people convicted of low-level offenses, and authorizing earned release for prisoners who complete certain rehabilitation programs. By reducing the number of returns to prison, we're saving the taxpayers money, which leads me to my third claim or cost. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, other punishments such as life without parole might provide equal deterrence at a far less cost and without the attendant risk of executing an innocent person, which leads us to our fourth point. The death penalty should be abolished because it does not deter crime from happening. While the death penalty is supposed to help crime rates go down, the crimes that criminals are put down for still continues to happen after they've been killed. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, criminals would rather face the death penalty rather than no punishment at all. It also explained that at times criminals will commit a crime wanting to get the death penalty instead of staying in the prison for the rest of their life. This goes to show how little significance being put to death holds for serious criminals. If the death penalty is what these criminals want, then we shouldn't.
All right, that's 5 minutes.
Today, we will be tested as a listener. Opinions regarding the death penalty can be black, white, or a mix of both and become a muddy gray. My team and I will refute the following claim. The death penalty should be abolished. Our definition of the death penalty goes as follows. Capital punishment is the execution of an offender sentenced to death after conviction by a court of law of a criminal offense. Capital punishment should be distinguished from extrajudicial executions carried out without due process of law. My team and I will refute the given claim by debating how it can be reformed and not abolished in the United States. The framework for today's debate is capital punishment. The current U.S. death penalty has major structural issues that make it weak and unjust. What we suggest would be ways capital punishment should behave in order for it to be effective. That is why we believe in reform instead of outright abolishment. Before we get into reform, we must tell you why we think the death penalty should not be abolished. The death penalty is a sensitive topic. We are aware of the moral, religious, and other philosophical beliefs that speak against capital punishment. However, there is a high popularity rate amongst Americans in favor of keeping the death penalty. According to the Heritage Foundation, a majority of Americans quite reasonably support the death penalty in appropriate cases and believe that, despite its imperfections, it is constitutional. The Supreme Court has held the death penalty to be constitutional. The 5th and 14th Amendments carry express approval of the death penalty. A person may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The death penalty should only be used against those who commit heinous crimes, the worst of the worst. Capital punishment is a way to ensure these convicted murderers never commit a crime again and to keep people safe. Santa Carla Publication says justice is essentially a matter of ensuring everyone is treated equally. By inflicting death on those who deliberately inflict death on others, the death penalty ensures justice for all. Retribution is the theory that criminals deserve to be punished based on the severity of the crime that they committed. Many people believe retribution is all about vengeance and hatred for the criminal, but this is wrong. Retribution is all about justice. Not just justice for the victim, but justice for the family and the people. We argue that the death penalty can offer a sense of justice and retribution, allowing the affected families to find solace and move forward. Think about the case of Nicholas Cruz. He was the perpetrator of the devastating Magori Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in 2018 in Parkland, Florida. He killed 17 people. That is 17 different families and a community that will never be the same. Nicholas Cruz was sentenced to life in prison, which was a shock for many. Ryan Petty, a father of one of the victims, stated to the press, "If you can't get the death penalty for killing 17 in a school, I don't know what you can get the death penalty for." Sparing the life of Nicholas Cruz has left a taste of injustice among the families and community of Florida, Parkland, Florida. Studies show that the recidivism of sex offenders tends to be higher. This means that after they are released from prison, the likelihood that they commit a crime again is more likely than not. The researchers According to a study done by Langen, Schmidt, and DeRose, the researchers found a sexual recidivism rate of 5.3% for the entire sample of sex offenders, based on an arrest during the 3-year follow-up period. Nearly 4 out of every 10 sex offenders in the study were returned to prison within 3 years of their release due to the commission of a new crime or a technical violation of the release conditions. This is an example of why retribution is something that should be applied to the death penalty. Without it, criminals can commit heinous crimes and continue with their behavior. The death penalty serves as a strong deterrent against heinous crimes, as potential offenders may think twice before committing them, knowing the ultimate punishment is possible. There was a study that looked at the murder rate in New Jersey after the death penalty was repealed. Mark Guess headed the study for the Justice Policy Journal and concluded that the results of the present study suggest that the repeal of the death penalty in New Jersey increased the murder rate. Taking a life is permissible if necessary to achieve the greatest balance of good over evil. According to the San Carlo publication, the case against capital punishment is often made on the basis that society has a moral obligation to protect human life, not take it. Taking human life is permissible only if necessary to achieve the greatest balance of good over evil for everyone involved. Reform simply means amending, correcting, or improving faults and problems in the system. It involves the development of policies that aim to enhance condition and consequently develop a justice system that is more efficient for society at large. Without reformation, the death penalty process, improper procedures can happen, leading to carelessness. We are aware that there is an unfortunate number of people who were wrongfully committed and sentenced to death. I'll bring up the unfortunate case of Earl Clanton. The state of Virginia doesn't seem to have rushed to deal with his body. An envelope containing Clanton's autopsy reported
And I'll give you that 1 minute.
We're going to use our time. What I write? Yeah. Yes.
Something be real.
Do I start first?
Go ahead and start. Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you guys were talking about like the reformation. Did you guys do like the studies on like the cost of like what's going to be compared to like the death penalty?
We did look at a couple of articles about the cost. I do understand that you brought up that the cost of inflicting the death penalty is extremely high, but I do have to say, wouldn't it need to be high if we are going to give somebody the death penalty? There's a lot of things that go into capital punishment. So obviously, you're going to want the best judge. You're going to want the best defense lawyer. You're going to want the best offensive lawyer. You're going to want the best of everything. And to put somebody to death is a great deal. And I believe that is why the death penalty is so high. No comment? Any other questions?
I mean, back and forth.
Yeah, I think she asked the question.
Okay, no, I was just asking if you had any comments. Let's see. You did say, and if you can repeat the quote if you want, you did say something about how the death penalty gives prosecutors instant punishment. What do you mean by instant punishment?
So instead of getting like a fair trial, because there have been many cases where people were actually innocent because I don't know how to say the other parts. There were actually parts where there were judges who decided to just kind of like throw the case off. They didn't want to look into it more. There were cops who wanted to give like fraudulent evidence. And so instead of like having like good people in there, like innocent people are being killed.
Okay, but I will say the phrase instant punishment is a little iffy. I don't know if that was the correct phrase to use for capital punishment because, like you said, capital punishment is drawn out for a long period of time. That is not instant punishment. That is making sure. Oh. I didn't even like get into my thing. 2 minutes. That's crazy. Okay. Nice. Good job, guys. Gonna get it. I'm proud of us. Good job.
Speaker number 2, you're ready.
So they said that the death penalty has a high popularity rate in favor of it. I don't know that continuing to institute the death penalty just because a good number of people support it is a good thing. A lot of people support many different, beliefs in this country, and not all of them are good, like racism and things like that. And so I don't believe that just because a good number of people support it, the judicial system should continue to enforce it. And then they also said that it is only used against those that commit, this should only be used against those that commit heinous crimes. That isn't really, we shouldn't be the ones to decide who lives. I know the criminals decided who lived and shouldn't, but we shouldn't use that as an excuse to kill somebody. There are other options like solitary confinement, or doing a better job at making sure that these criminals are locked up. And it is a financial strain. The death penalty is a financial strain on the economy, and we could be using that money instead to make sure that these criminals stay locked up and that they don't commit these crimes again, like reformation and just other options instead of actually putting them down. They also said that it gives families peace. That's not always the case because not everyone wants to see somebody die. Not everybody wants the person that committed the crime to be taken out so easily. They would rather see them walked away, maybe suffering, instead of instantly having a quicker, a quicker way out, if so to speak. They would rather see them. Some victims' families would even actually rather see them change instead of just being put down for their crimes. And then they also said that something about sex offenders will commit crimes again and be locked up again 3 years after they've been released. If we were to put them down, there's still going to be other people that are going to commit those crimes in their place. The death penalty doesn't actually scare people into not committing crimes again. Like we said before, some criminals will commit crimes in the hopes that they do get the death penalty instead of actually getting years in jail or whatever. They wouldn't. So basically, like I said, putting them down doesn't stop the crimes from happening. It may stop that person from committing those crimes, but it doesn't stop crime as a whole. The crime is to continue to be committed. And they also said that criminals think twice. Like I said before, it doesn't really stop them. They don't really care about it. It's not really especially heat of the moment crimes or whatever. people won't actually think about that before they commit a crime. The death penalty, the death penalty, just, the death penalty doesn't, make them think twice about their crime. They'll still commit the crime.
Before I begin, I'd like to reiterate that capital punishment is the execution of an offender's sentence to death after conviction by a court of law for a criminal offense. Like my counterpart said, capital punishment should be distinguished from extrajudicial executions carried out without due process of law. They talk about innocence, but I don't have to start like that. Today, we have innocent projects and legal advocacy organizations that are significantly compared to the re-examination of cases and the identification of potential miscarriage of justice. Countries that still practice the death penalty are under increasing scrutiny from international human rights bodies, incentivizing governments to constantly refine their legal systems and reduce the risk of wrongful executions. Heightening public awareness of the potential of wrongful executions has led to increased scrutiny and demand for accountability. The interconnectedness of the modern world, fostered by media and internet, means the cases of potential injustice are more likely to come under public scrutiny, compelling authorities to address concerns and rectify errors promptly. Advancements in forensic sciences such as DNA testing have enabled more accurate and reliable identification of perpetrators, serving as a safeguard against wrongful executions. The criminal justice system, especially in jurisdictions that apply the death penalty, has evolved to incorporate exhaustive and multi-tiered judicial processes, including excessive appeals and reviews to ensure a fair trial and scrutinize all available evidence. And this can be seen if we look at the Death Penalty Information Center data. There have been over 200 exonerations over the past few years, based on the new technology we have. The last innocent person to convicted of the death penalty was in 2014, but they were exonerated in 2017. This means as of today, based on our advancement in technology, if due diligence is performed, there is a very slim chance of sentencing someone to death unless it is 99% certainty. According to data from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the rate of innocent defendants serving life in prison is much higher than those on death row. The legal resources poured into the capital punishment cases also lead to the exoneration of innocent parties, making justice more accessible to those not convicted. Capital defendants who are removed from death row but not exonerated typically because their sentences are reduced to life imprisonment, no longer receive extraordinary level of attention that is devoted to death row inmates. If they are in fact innocent, they are much less likely to be exonerated than if they have remained on death row. As a result, the proportion of death sentence inmates who are exonerated understates the rate of false convictions among death sentences because the intensive search for possible errors is largely abandoned once the threat of execution is removed. They also talk about moral and ethics, but supporters of death penalty argue that it is more morally justifiable in cases of extreme violence and brutality. We contend that society has its right to protect itself from those who commit the most egregious crimes, and death penalty serves as a proportional response. Morally, proponents emphasize the importance of providing closure to the families of the victims. The death penalty is seen as a means of acknowledging the gravity of the crime, validating the suffering of the victims' families, and signaling that society takes such offenses seriously. This perspective perceives that the ethical duty to address emotional and psychological toll on the victim's family justify the use of death penalty as a form of justice. For many families, seeing the killer of their loved one die makes them feel like justice was served. There's something wrong with our society that Sobor is eating and breathing, and we are paying for it. This was so brutal. He should have been put to death, and that was the view that was shared by many. This is a statement by Paula Rose, who lost her friend and colleague named Catherine to her abusive ex-boyfriend. He held her hostage in her own room, stabbed her, then continued to rip open her chest, her cavity, and remove her internal organs. Paula stated that she would not mind putting her tax money towards his execution. If those dangerous criminals are incarcerated and spend most of their time in institutions, they are still being taken care of. Do you know it is a crime? It is a crime to not give medical help to prison inmates. So that's saying you are paying paying your tax dollars to help the medical, if they have like cancer or diabetes, the prison still takes care of them if they have those things. Someone who has killed many people, someone who has murdered, they are still paying for his medical bills, your tax money. So are you fine with that? I'm asking with you. You talk about the racial bias, but unfair punishing innocent people is wrong, and I accept that. Some argue that disclosure of punishment is unfair among guilty individuals, but it's crucial to focus on whether the person is being punished with deserves. Justice is about individuals, not their race or wealth.
Right, that's fine.
So you talked about the medical bills. Are you saying that everyone that goes to prison should automatically get for we didn't understand.
Well, I say that you are paying tax dollars for people who have killed people to make them live. So you talk about moral standpoints, but morally, do you accept using money to someone has killed someone, or like not just killing someone in an ignorant way that they got put in death sentence or should be put in a death sentence, but you are paying for them to live? Do you accept that? Are you good with that?
No, we're
Okay.
saying
Said
that.
no. I understand. He said they do not really care about the victims. Does that not mean, see, they don't really care about the victims? That means they have no moral standpoint and they should be killed because of that. But they don't really care anymore.
What's the question?
Yeah, I'm like, you said they don't really care about the victims. So if they don't care about the victims, why should we care about the person that is killing people?
Because we're not supposed to be there. Because we're not.
Well, we are not, it's the government. It's a judicial process.
We said. I'm just saying that we aren't them, so just because they think like that, it doesn't mean that judicial system is supposed to think like that. You're supposed to just serve justice, and it should instead listen to what maybe what the victim's family chooses.
Well, there are many victim families that don't want the death penalty and the death penalty. I brought that one example.
I'm gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
All right, that's 2 minutes.
Okay, alright, so of course our 3 main points were the cost is too high, the botched executions, and then kind of just, how you say, just getting rid of the death penalty in general because it's inhumane and not right. So basically, back to the cost, I believe, I mean, there really is like billions of dollars going into the death penalty, and I think that good use of those dollars could be maybe helping these inmates. And I know, I mean, obviously they're cruel people who did heinous crimes and things like that, but a lot of these criminals have childhood trauma, you know, past mental issues, things that obviously can be looked at and not fixed, but, you know, kind of get them to build character in better ways. And I think the death penalty is a right act that should be put on these criminals, especially when we have life in prison. I think it's more of an more humane way to go. It's natural, and a lot of these death row inmates are put on death row and they die naturally anyway before they even get to the execution part. And then a lot of these people that work with there's a lot of people that work with the death penalty that also disagree with it. Many of them need therapy, mental help, and carry the image of killing prisoners for the rest of their lives. So putting that mental toll on someone, on an innocent person who just works there, and even if they disagree with it, should show you the effects that it has on just people in general. And then they had a point that is talking about how they said death penalty ensures justice for all, and how the death penalty needs reformation and things like that, and how we put our tax dollars to get the best of the best, like attorneys and lawyers, judges, and all that. But if we're putting all our money to get the best of the best for these, why are we still having these broken systems? Why is there still a need for reformation? Why are we still debating if our tax dollars are being put to good use for the death penalty? It kind of just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if we're putting all this good money into it and we have the best of the best, why is it still a broken system? That kind of makes no sense. And then the death penalty, the amount of death penalty over time, the amount of people on death penalty over time has significantly decreased. The amount of death row inmates have constantly decreased significantly over time, 17% decrease over the course of the decade from April 1st, 2008 to March of 2018. And then they also made a case about how, I guess sometime in New Jersey when the repeal of death penalty was live, there was an increase in murder rates and crime rates. But crime rates and murder rates and all that are still at an all-time high, and I believe that the death penalty is not going to stop that, because people are going to do what they want to do, people are going to feel how they want to feel, and that has no effect on people, in my opinion, especially with the broken system that we have today. And I don't think the death penalty needs reformation, I think the criminal justice system needs reformation. If we have the right people with the right mindsets, the right outlook on life, the good perspectives, that really takes time for this evidence, we can get people in the right places they need, get families the right justice that they seek, and it's just helpful and beneficial for everyone overall. And they deemed the death penalty as constitutional. I would say that over time, it's not really constitutional because, like going back to these botched executions, they're forcing people to die. There was a case that this man went through lethal injection 16 times and didn't die until a heart attack later. Forcing someone to die over and over again is deemed as cruel and unusual punishment, which is deemed unconstitutional according to the United States. And also, it's against America's beliefs, because America was built on the idealization of God and being God's people and having God's will. And if that is true in God's eyes, we can't decide someone's fate and kill people and murder others. And that's just inhumane and not right. So, yeah.
I'd like to speak about an important factor that seems to be forgotten and lost during death penalty trials, and one that is seemed to be overlooked by the opponents. Have we stopped and considered, and I mean really stopped and considered, the thoughts and feelings of the victims' loved ones? How can we forget about them and what they want? As my teammates spoke about reform, costs, popularity of the death penalty, and so forth, and listening to the opposing side, I believe that we can all agree that what the family wants is the most important thing here. Who are we to take the death penalty away when some of us have never faced grief after death, or when you haven't suffered through a family member that has been murdered, raped, and even more? Don't take my word for it. Here's Donald E. Blackburn, who said, I view him pretty much as a cancer that has to be removed. Again, has to be removed. I'm sure y'all are familiar with Ted Bundy. He left her body in the woods like a piece of garbage after she was brutally murdered. Or another testimony, quote, to know that he will never walk this earth again does give me a little more peace than I had yesterday. But I will never have peace knowing what he did to my brother Johnny, to Amy, to James, and to Terry. He got what he deserved today. This murderer, he killed 4 people. And this was from the Death Penalty Information Center. I would also like y'all to remember this story, sourced from Arkansas Senator's website. Capital punishment can bring closure to families, victims' families, deter other would-be murderers, and express a moral outrage for our society for the most atrocious crimes. Consider the case of Daniel Lewis Lee, one of the 5 convicted murderers whose execution will now proceed. Lee belonged to a white supremacist group called the Ryan People's Revolution. Justice demands that Daniel Lewis Lee and murderers like him face the ultimate punishment, which truly fits a crime. He was executed in 2020. This man murdered a wife and a daughter, suffocated them with a plastic bag, and dumped their bodies into a swamp to be left forgotten. Or again, as my first speaker mentioned about Nicholas Cruz, he killed 17 innocent children. Again, innocent children who had nothing but their lives to live. Once again, the people who commit such atrocities should be expelled from the face of the earth. Pure evilness should not be roaming the earth, knowing that victims' families don't want them alive any longer. There should be no chance for the evilness to spread in order to spare another family's grief and loss. And I want to bring up another point that the person mentioned about how the death penalty is inhumane. And again, I think we're forgetting the fact that being stabbed repeatedly 15 times or being raped repeatedly is also inhumane. So I don't think that point really merits Anyways, the criminal justice system also, another point that I brought up, is a completely entire issue in regards to reform, and our debate is about the death penalty.
Go ahead. You're the judge. Go ahead.
We'll have our grand crossfire for 3 minutes, and then give you a 2-minute warning. 1 minute. That's every single one.
How much time do we have?
Give a minute.
Okay.
They have a minute.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're stopping. Oh yeah, okay.
Alright, here we go. Yeah, the first one is that. Sorry, 3 minutes. Audience, please.
So I wanted to ask, I heard a lot
or more than one of you mentioned that instead of using the death penalty, things like solitary confinement or just being in prison for life should be used. However, overcrowding in prisons is already a big issue, and quite frankly, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, just within the past 4 years, the number of people held in prisons and jails in the United States has more than quadrupled, with the total number of people incarcerated now surpassing 2.3 million. Since 1970, the U.S. prison population has risen 700%, a rate that far outpaces that of the general U.S. population in crime rates. So to say, oh, we should just put these people in solitary confinement, oh, we should just put these people in prison, is not necessarily to that great of a point because of the fact that there's already people are losing places to place inmates now.
What do you suggest that we do with people who inflict crimes? Again, inflict crimes on innocent people. People who just walk the streets, going about their day, going to the grocery store, going to school, going to church. These people inflict crimes on those people. What do you suggest that we do with those people?
So
You said you wanted to put them in therapy, you wanted to put them in jail for a very long time and give them reconstruction, again, spending a large amount of money on those reconstructional systems. And yeah.
So I think that they should actually be staying in prison, and then I think those with the lesser charges, such as like being caught with weed, like do you really think somebody should be put in it for years?
Also, you should answer the question that my first person brought up.
I was going to answer. The overcrowding part. I was going to say that a lot of overcrowding also takes place for innocent lives being in jail for no complete reason.
Which is why we mentioned reform. Keep going.
Yeah, and that's why I also mentioned reforming the criminal justice system to take those innocent lives out of prison, to stop the overcrowding on the death row and in jail in general. So to answer that question, and then your question was, how do we? So can you repeat your question? How to stop the innocent people?
I have a question. So you're saying if there's a chance for like 100% certainty that the person is guilty, will you be in favor of death penalty?
The person is 100% guilty.
If the person is 100% guilty.
Of what crime?
Okay, let's say a school shooter, for example.
Yeah.
You favor death penalty in that situation?
Death penalty, I believe that if you look at it for the state from an eye for an eye perspective, it could be understandable. However, the state then comes
It's
in.
understandable. That's what I mean.
However,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
understandable.
however, going in, bro.
That's crazy. You're traumatized.
Our support.
We're having so much fun.
What was it? All right.
Was it 5 minutes for this one?
5 minutes.
Okay, we'll start. All right, so to first start off with the first point they brought up with overcrowding prison systems. Death row inmates make only about 2,000 inmates in prison compared to the 1.2 million inside the prison system in the United States. So I don't know if you guys want to take out 2,000 prisoners and say that would clear up a good few cells, but across the entire United States, I think it's a drop in the proverbial bucket. But then moving on to the next point, whenever it comes into the expense of the death penalty. The death penalty is not only expensive to be an antiquated system for how much money is being used in it, but the mistakes are still being made. And then kind of coming back into the large crimes whenever it comes into it, right? We're talking about the reformation of the death penalty. Well, actually, we're not talking about the reformation of the death penalty. We're discussing whether to abolish it or to keep it. That's simply what the argument is. The issue, and what is being presented here, is that abolishing is no longer in what their equation is. They're looking to reform the death penalty of what it is now. So they no longer believe the current present state of the death penalty is even a presentable case anymore. So that by itself, that in and of itself kind of makes a fallacy, kind of makes a hollow point for it. Bringing on to the next point of coming into the extreme cases of school shooters and to the extreme cases of people who commit absolutely heinous crimes. We're not talking about the most extreme of people. Those people can still receive life in prison, or was it from quoted victims' families that they would rather see the person rot in a jail cell knowing that they'll never have another chance to escape or do anything wrong again, instead of just having a quick execution of leaving their life. They no longer have any kind of investment into the world that the person living here now has to live through. That family is going to be living with that loss of their family for the rest of their lives. However, that person death row is now gone. And that is in an optimal case. For killing an absolute crazy person, killing an insane serial killer. That's your best case. Getting that person innocent. And their justice is no longer qualified. Now what goes on to the next part of the case is whenever it comes into the actual flaws that are still made in that system whenever the innocent person was and whenever the correct person is taken out of the equation. If we're still only talking about the most extreme of cases, that is not that's not the purpose of the death penalty, and that's not the purpose of reform. It's not to build off of the most extreme case and to build off the most intense forms to then make adjustments from there. The intention of proper reform, the intention of proper justice would be to adjust the system from a place that would take all things into account, not just a single or a second or a third extremely intense case. So then, coming on to a close, actually, one moment. Anyways, come back to it, right? One of the other points I would like to bring up forward as well, talking about the death penalty and its egregious nature, is the fact that it's heavily racially biased as well. The death penalty, and not only the death penalty, but the U.S. justice system has been racially biased for decades and has continued to make these same mistakes. Especially not only with the lives that are being stuck and left in prison, but with the lives that are being taken from this justice system. Over 67% of justice bullets and of death row inmates and death row exonerees are black victims, are people who were mauled and are people who were done wrong by the justice system. I know that many of you can recall back to a time when was just drawn upon common memory of a Netflix series whenever 4 young black men were then wrongfully accused of raping and hurting a white woman. Them being able to then be put into jail and then be put on death row and wrongfully accused of that death penalty and wrongly accused of those actions, had we killed them right there in that moment, would have had innocent blood in all of our hands. To be able to continue to keep on this death penalty is all of us, for us to continue having the death penalty going on, is for us to claim innocence, is for us to not take on personal recognition of the part that we're playing. Us not deciding to put our hands down and us not deciding to put our foot down to no longer accept this antiquated system of taking other lives whenever we still obviously cannot properly maintain a justice system is us being complicit in the nature of murdering many innocent victims and taking the chance of murdering many innocent victims in the future. Thank you. That concludes.
As one more reminder, I would like to reiterate to the audience that we are against the abolishment of the death penalty. My name is Emma Hegel, and over the duration of this debate, my debate group and I have shared multiple facts, evidence, and points to support our claim that the death penalty should not be abolished. To restate, as our first speaker, Malaya, stated, she comes from Hood 2023, the definition of the death penalty is as follows. Capital punishment is the execution of an offender sentenced to death after a conviction of a court of law of a criminal offense. Capital punishment should be distinguished from extrajudicial executions carried out without due process of law. One of the most important points of this debate for us is to highlight the idea of reform. The death penalty as in place today is not perfect. However, the abolishment of the death penalty would be the wrong decision all the way around. The death penalty needs to be in place, but altered by erasing racism and wrongful convictions. For the death penalty to be applied fairly, we must strive to make criminal justice system work as it was intended to. That being said, there must be some form of punishment to hold murderers accountable, and historically, the death penalty has been the most effective way of doing so. Another claim that my group highlighted throughout our debate is the act of deterrence, and the death penalty brings to the table. The existence of the death penalty serves as a deterrent to potential offenders. The fear of facing the ultimate punishment helps stop individuals from committing serious crimes. I'm going to circle back to the introduction of this debate, where our first speaker, Malaya, gave a great example of deterrence. John Wachowicz and another criminal held 8 bank employees at gunpoint in an effort to rob a bank before FBI officials showed up. He stated, and I quote, "I'll shoot everyone in the bank. The Supreme Court will let me get away with this. There's no death penalty. It's ridiculous. I could shoot everyone in here, then throw my gun down and walk out, and they can't put me in the electric chair. You have to have the death penalty, otherwise this can happen every single day." And she got that from Paul 2008. The death penalty is necessary in order to deter violence among citizens. Suppose the death penalty was abolished. What would happen then? What would deter the utmost of violence? John Wachowicz admitted that himself. Despite its errors, the death penalty still has a high popularity rate among citizens of the United States, and for many cases, as we've talked about, it has brought immense closure to families of victims whose lives were taken by these individuals. We are aware of the moral and religious beliefs that are against the death penalty. However, to ignore the statements of victims' families, as the opposing side has done so far, on this topic would be ignorant. The death penalty provides a sense of justice, offering these families a form of retribution for the harm inflicted on their loved ones. I would like to once again resurface the interview with one of the infamous Ted Bundy's victims' fathers, Donald E. Blackburn, father of Janice Ott. He said, "I view him pretty much as cancer that needs to be removed." Another example of this occurred when Georgianne Hawkins fell victim to Ted Bundy. Eddie Hawkins, mother of Georgianne, stated, "I haven't thought about forgiving him. How could you forgive someone who hurts your child? I'm not that gracious of an individual." The hurt in these families is real. The horrible, obscene, disgusting things that were done to their sons, daughters, parents, or grandparents will forever stay with them. To abolish any of their sources of closure would be wrong. To summarize, the death penalty should not be abolished. We have focused on reform and the importance of it, the importance of victims and their families, and the crucial aspect of deterrence that the death penalty brings. Thank you.
I would like to start off by putting more emphasis on the fact that we are against the abolishment of the death penalty, as Emma said. But I would also like to note that both sides truthfully share similar stances about certain aspects revolving around the death penalty. We are both aware that there are issues within our system that are crucial when it comes to deciding if someone should face capital punishment and in the actual execution of an individual. The difference between wanting to have the death penalty abolished rather than keeping it and working towards more reform would be that if the death penalty was abolished, what would be a solid solution to dealing with criminals who commit these heinous crimes? To say that it should not be another human's choice to be able to take a life is hypocritical in a sense, because what about the innocent lives of those who were so brutally taken away from their families? Would your answer change if it was your sister or your brother or your friends and family? I'm aware of the overcrowding in prisons that consist of individuals that are probably innocent, but that doesn't change the fact that they're overcrowded. Retribution, as mentioned earlier by Malaya, is something that should apply when talking about the death penalty. Malaya took a quote from Claire and Manuel from the Santa Carla publication that said, quote, "The death penalty should only be used against those who commit heinous crimes, the worst of the worst. Capital punishment is a way to ensure these convicted murderers never commit a crime again and keep people safe." Santa Carla publication says, "Justice is essentially a matter of ensuring everyone is treated equally. By inflicting death on those who deliberately inflict death on others, the death penalty ensures justice for all." End quote. Now, if you would like a real life example to pair this quote with, we could go with one of the examples Malaya mentioned earlier. A study done with a sample of sex offenders in July of 2015 by Lane, Schmidt, and Rose found that there is a recidivism rate of 5.3% for the entire sample of these sex offenders, meaning that the criminal was reoffending. Nearly 4 out of every 10, which is 38.6% of these sex offenders in the study, were returned to prison within 3 years of their release due to the commission of a new crime or a technical violation of their release conditions. This is a prime example of why retribution is necessary. Without it, these criminals have the power and the ability to commit these horrible crimes once again. Going back to the idea of reforming the death penalty, it is critical that the reason for reform is acknowledged. From potential wrongful convictions to racial biases, our system is thoroughly flawed, and we are not denying that. Reforming the death penalty instead of abolishing it altogether would allow the system to correct failed justice and address marginalized groups that face injustice from the death penalty. This can allow a shift in our system that leads us to an emphasis on rehabilitation and a more humane justice system. Reforming the death penalty can almost be seen as a middle ground because it acknowledges the need for a better justice system as well as weighing the severity of different crimes that are committed. Abolishing the death penalty may seem like more of an easier solution, but what comes after that abolishment is always a lingering question. Reforming consists of improved legal representation, stricter presentation of evidence, and ensuring a fair trial. Reformation can also be done in correspondence with retribution, simply because if the issues are changed in our justice system, then it would allow the possible restriction of only applying the death penalty to heinous crimes. Regardless of your stance on the death penalty being abolished, I think it is safe to say that this can be a sensitive subject for both the affirmative and the negative because of the impact of moral beliefs. However, I think that it is important to note that families of victims deserve justice for the ones that they have lost. To not consider how they feel when they have had tragic losses is downright ignorant, and it is essentially demeaning their feelings as if losing their loved ones was not important. It is not necessarily the idea of the death penalty that is wrong, but the system that was built around it that needs a lot of work, which is why we are pushing for reform rather than the easy solution of abolishing the death penalty. Thank you for your time.
And that is all we had. So I want to thank you, everybody, for your good work. Yes, the sign-up sheet, if you're here for extra credit, is right up here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good game.